XT. Blackwood Woods. Morning, 2025. The air hung heavy and still over Blackwood Woods, a shroud woven from mist and the faint, sweet decay of fallen leaves. It clung to the ancient oak trees, silvered the moss on jagged rocks, and silenced the usual symphony of morning birds. You could walk for hours here and feel like the world had forgotten you, lost in the whispering quiet. It was just past 6:30 a.m. when the drone of heavy machinery shattered the peace. A logging crew, cutting a new access road deeper into the forest, had been pushing through a particularly dense thicket when the excavators hit something solid, something metallic, something impossibly large and out of place. Foreman Greg, a grizzled man with a permanent crick in his neck and calloused hands, stood beside a newly opened trench, wiping sweat from his brow with a grimy handkerchief. His face, usually set in lines of exhaustion, was pale, his eyes wide. Beyond him, partially unearthed, was a faded skeletal shape, yellow though now muted by decades of earth and grime. It was unmistakably the top half of a school bus. Its windows, dark and empty, stared out like vacant eyes. Foreman Greg picked up his radio, his voice a strained whisper against the hum of his idle machinery. "Greg, dispatch. This is Foreman Greg. We're out by the old Blackwood Creek cut." "Yeah. Look, we found something. You're gonna want to send someone out here, something old, real old. Looks like a school bus. Inty Police Station. Break room morning, 2025. Detective Elara Vance, 40s, sharp, tired eyes, a detective's innate curiosity constantly battling a deep-seated weariness, was pouring herself a lukewarm cup of coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed a familiar, depressing tune. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up, expecting her morning brief. Elara Vance. She listened, her expression slowly shifting from routine disinterest to a sharp, focused intensity. The mug, half-raised, paused in midair. Elara into phone. "A school bus, Blackwood Woods, are you sure about the plates?" A beat. Elara, quietly. 1986, Juniper Creek Elementary. She didn't need to write it down. The details were etched into the collective memory of Willow Creek County, a scar that never truly healed. 15 children, their teacher, the bus driver, vanished without a trace almost 4 decades ago. Elara had been 9 years old. She'd known some of them, kids from the next town over, their faces peering from newspaper headlines that had papered the town for years. The Blackwood 15, the cold case that chilled every local to their core. Elara set the untouched coffee down, the mug rattling softly against the ceramic. She grabbed her keys, her movements automatic, and was out the door before the dispatcher had even finished giving the location. She didn't bother to lock up. Blackwood Woods, morning, 2025. The drive to Blackwood Woods was a slow crawl, the mist clinging to her windshield. The tall pines, silent witnesses, lined the winding county road. She passed the abandoned Juniper Creek Mill, its skeletal remains a reminder of a bygone era. She turned onto an unpaved logging trail, her tires crunching on loose gravel. When she arrived, the area was already cordoned off. Yellow tape flapped gently in the faint breeze. A few uniformed officers and the logging crew stood in a hushed perimeter, their faces grim. The yellow of the bus, dull and caked with mud, was stark against the dark earth. It looked less like a vehicle and more like a forgotten tomb. A large excavator stood motionless beside it, a metal giant caught mid-act. The foreman, Greg, saw her approach and pulled off his hard hat, revealing a thinning scalp. "Greg, detective. Vance. We haven't touched anything since we saw what it was. You'll want to see this." Elara nodded, her throat tight. They had cleared enough of the vehicle to expose the emergency exit door at the rear. A sour, earthy smell, ancient and profound, hung in the air. Inside, it was a cavern of dust, brittle decay, and the ghost of time. The seats were still bolted to the floor, some of the seat belts still latched. A faded, crumpled comic book lay on the floor near the 4th row. A small, muddy sneaker, untied, rested near the back steps, covered in a delicate filigree of root systems, but no bodies. The bus was empty. That made it worse. A silent monument to a question mark. A hollow chamber where answers should have been. Elara stepped inside, her boots creaking on the warped floorboards. The air was stale, heavy with the weight of decades. As she moved toward the front, her gaze snagged on something. Taped to the dashboard, barely faded, was a laminated class list, written in the neat, cheerful hand of Mrs. Elara Vance, the third-grade teacher who had vanished with her students. 15 names, all ages 8 to 10. At the very bottom, scrawled in a different hand, darker, messier, almost furious, was a message in faded red marker. We never made it to Juniper Creek. Elara backed out of the bus, the morning air suddenly colder. Single crow cawed in the distance, a mournful, solitary sound. She turned to Foreman Greg, her voice flat, almost an exhale. Elara, seal off the area. No one touches anything else until the state team gets here. Greg. Yes, ma'am. Elara looked back at the bus, framed by the silent pines. They were supposed to be gone for a single afternoon. Instead, they never returned. And now, after nearly 4 decades, the bus had reappeared. Without them. But someone had been here. Long enough to write that note. Long enough to leave behind a message. In T. Willow Creek County Records Building. Day, 2025. The old Willow Creek County Records Building smelled of dust, old paper, and a faint, lingering scent of forgotten ambition. Its ceiling fans spun with a lazy indifference, like they were waiting for time itself to slow down. Elara stood at the counter, her fingers drumming softly on the worn wood, as the clerk retrieved a heavy casebox from the archives. It had been an hour since she left the bus site, but the smell of damp earth and decay still clung to her clothes, to her skin. Clerk. Here we are. The clerk, a thin woman with severe glasses, slid the file forward with both hands, as if it might shatter if not handled with extreme care. Clerk. Juniper Creek Elementary Field Trip, Grade 3, October 27, 1986. Classified as unresolved. Sealed after 7 years. No updates. Elara nodded and carried the cumbersome box to one of the side desks. She opened the lid slowly, almost reverently, as if afraid something might leap out. Inside, grainy black and white, photos of the children, Xeroxed class rosters, a list of personal items reportedly packed for the trip, a teddy bear, a bright red crayon box, a tattered copy of Where the Wild Things Are. And at the very bottom, a report stamped in bold red, missing persons. No evidence of foul play. That stamp had haunted the town for decades. No evidence, no foul play, no children. But Elara and everyone else had always suspected there was more. The bus driver's name was Arthur Jenkins, a quiet new hire with a clean record, no family in the area. He had reportedly vanished the same day, never found. And then there was the last-minute change to the field trip destination. Originally, they were going to the Blackwood Museum, but a notice found in Mrs. Vance's desk indicated a change to a private nature retreat on the far side of Blackwood Woods, run by a newly established unlisted charity called the Guiding Light Foundation. The foundation had dissolved a year later. Its founders, a mysterious couple named John and Mary Doe, had never been traced. Elara leaned back in her chair, staring at the photocopied class photo. She still remembered their names, their laughter in the halls, their bright cartoon-covered lunchboxes swinging as they raced toward that yellow bus. She traced a finger, over one face in particular, Caleb Reed, wide, curious eyes, a mischievous grin. Caleb had lived just down the street from Elara. They had built forts in